Hi everybody, welcome to Book Talks with Miss Thomas. Today I am finally going to do Katie from Paperback and Ponytails. I'm finally going to do her readathon. Although in this case, I guess it's a readathon because I'm a little late, but better late than never. So welcome to Book Talks with Miss Thomas. If you are new here, welcome, yay. Please subscribe. And if you are returning, clearly you love to hear about books, and I'm so glad you're here. Guess who else is here? We have a special visitor. Hello. I guess she didn't want the attention. But yeah, you know cats. Truffles couldn't resist to get in on the action. So today I'm doing Katie's Journey Through the Bible. She has this map of Journey Through the Bible, and I printed it out and I wrote all over it. And I know it was an October readathon, and we are in October now, but I probably won't get to post it until November. Am I the only one? I can make a video. I can talk on and on and on a video, but it's the editing that gets me. And I know I'm not going to have the time to edit this until later. So it'll probably post in November. But I have so many great books to tell you about because of Katie's fantastic prompts and her many different ideas for a journey through the Bible. It was such a great readathon, and Katie is such a great person and a great booktuber. And she has a Bible journaling channel. She has a Bible journaling channel as well. So I will link her below. Okay, so question number 1, where are you going? And that would be the Garden of Eden. She says to come up with a book that has nature on the cover. And I have been going on and on about The Memory of Light. I love that book. It's a young adult book. It's not necessarily Christian fiction, but it's a good young adult book about a girl who survives her attempt at suicide. Another book with nature on the cover would be The Help. So I own The Help. I have a copy at work, but I don't have a copy here at home with me. But it's definitely a great book. And, you know, it's been out for years, so you've probably read it. But if you haven't, you must read it. It's very good. And, you know, it's got the nature on the cover. And then they made it into a movie, and I think it has characters on the cover. Or maybe that's just the cover of the film. I'm not sure. But there are birds on the cover of the book. Okay. Right, Truffy? You like the birds. Number 2, Bethlehem. Okay, so a book with a house on the cover. And I would go with House on Mango Street. That's by Sandra Cisneros. And that is a popular one, read in high school sometimes. I've taught that book. And it's the story, it's just different girls, they're young, and they're talking about their desire to own a house. And they share their different vignettes, different stories about these girls growing up and what it's like to, you know, be an American, even though you have, you know, roots somewhere else, quite possibly. The House on Mango Street. It's a good book. It's a collection of vignettes. If you don't get a chance to read that, I will remember, hopefully, to link her poem that she writes. I'll put it down here, the name of the poem. But that's a really powerful poem, and she reads it herself. And I will never forget the ugly red sweater in that poem. So if you just want to hear an author read her poem beautifully, I'll link that below. Sandra Cisneros is just a delight. Okay, a promised book, a book you have promised to read. I talked about a different book in a different tag. This video for Katie's readathon, although I haven't read this one yet, but I've read most of these. The book that I promised to read, my dear friend gave me this book a long time ago, and shame all over me because I haven't read it yet, but I have had it by my bed for months, and I really do want to read it, and I'm really looking forward to reading it. And that is Peace Like a River. So, and look at that, it has nature on the cover too. But yeah, so this one I promised to read. It's supposed to be really good. This journey unfolds like a revelation, and its conclusion shows family, love, and faith can stand up to the most terrifying enemies and the most tragic of fates. So who wouldn't want to read that? It sounds really good. And my friend who knows me and loves me knows I will love it. So there's no reason why I haven't read it yet. Well, there is a reason. It's called grad school and my job. And but yeah, I do want to read it. Okay. So let's see. Jericho, a book with a lot of noise about it. And is it worth the hype? I would say The Maid. And I did do a video called, Is It Worth the Hype? So you can check that out and decide for yourself. But I'm going with The Maid. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I don't know if I would say it's worth the hype or not, but I definitely would recommend it. Jesus, food or drink on the cover. And I have to say, I may have mentioned this one in another video. It doesn't exactly have food on the cover, but it's about food, you know, what's not to like. And I've been meaning to read this. I bought this at the beach over a year ago. I've been back to the beach several times, and for some reason, I just haven't read it, but it sounds really good. Under the Table by Stephanie Evanovich. And I just love a book about cooking and food. And I think in this particular book, it's about people in a restaurant. I think it's a woman who wants to work as a chef or work in a restaurant somehow. And I love that kind of book. So sometimes I read these books and I'm just blown away by what it must be like to be a woman chef. Apparently it's a man's world. And I would imagine, because, you know, like I know Thanksgiving, I can't lift that turkey. So, and sometimes cooking in the big heavy pot with the boiling water and things like that. I would imagine being a woman in a very competitive field, and cooking in a hot kitchen would be a bit of a challenge. So I've seen that in books, and I enjoy that kind of, what would you call that? Trope? I don't know, but I enjoy that. I enjoy that in a book. Joseph, a book with many colors on the cover. I am going to go with, and this is another one, I've been carrying it around. I've been meaning to read it. I really want to read it. I saw it at Thrift Books and bought it because it just looks so good. And it is The Art of Losing Yourself. I've heard mixed things about it. Some people liked it, some people didn't on BookTube. But I want to read it, and I do love the cover. And the writing is in this pretty lavender color, and the sky is blue, and then there's yellow and orange from the sunset, the green grass. This little splash of red, I think, is a flower coming up. It's just very pretty. So I bought it because I thought it was so pretty, but I also like the idea. There's a sister. I love that sister relationship. And I think one's uptight and one gets into trouble. And I tend to like that kind of thing in a book. Peter, a book with water on the cover. If I Live by Terry Blackstock. Those are raindrops, aren't they? They look like water there on the cover. Haven't read this one yet. I read another one in the series, so I bought this one. A friend of mine told me this one's better than the one I read, but I do see some sort of water droplet there on the cover, so I'm going with that. Pharaoh's Daughter, a book about adoption or fostering. I am definitely going with one of my most beloved books from my childhood, and that is The Great Gilly Hopkins by Kathryn Patterson. Loved that book. I remember as a little girl reading that book, and I just thought Gilly Hopkins was so cool. And I enjoyed the different things that she would do, and I liked her spunk, and the ending of the book just broke my heart. I loved the perseverance of the foster mother, and I saw that it was made into a movie, so I'm going to see the movie and compare it to the book. I'm going to get it from TV, you know, from Amazon Prime, but The Great Gilly Hopkins was definitely a book that impressed me a great deal as a very young reader, and Gilly is a foster child that doesn't want to be fostered. She makes life miserable for her foster parents and her foster families because she's convinced that her mom is going to come get her. So she doesn't want to be adopted. And I just loved that book, The Great Gilly Hopkins. That's an oldie, but it's a goodie. For Ruth, a love story, I'm just going to go with a Spice King. I'm not big on romance. I have some romance. I know Becky Wade is supposed to be the queen of romance. I do have some Becky Wade books that I plan to read, but I will say I liked the Spice King. I read that, And Lovely Day with Holly invited me to read that with some of her book club friends and now my book club friends. And so I enjoyed that book because it had a lot more going on than the romance. And again, there's that sister relationship. I liked the main character in the book. She had a sister that was blind and she was kind of looking out for her, and she had a career interest, and there was some political interest and a little bit of historical interest. And so I would go with The Spice King for my romance. A book with royalty, Esther, Esther, because such a time as this and saving the people. I will say the Bible because we are all royalty. I am a daughter of the king, and so are you. You're a daughter or son of the king. So I would say Esther. That's a wonderful book in the Bible, but I'm just going to say the Bible because that's the easy way out. But also it is a book about royalty, and it's about our history as royalty, as children of God. Witness an event, Noah's Ark, something with a pear on the cover. Originally, I was going to go with The Help, but then I thought that's 3 birds. That's not 2 birds. So I'm going to go a little out of the box. Is this not the coolest pair of shoes you've ever seen? I love that pair of shoes. Mrs. Bunkle's Book Club. I haven't read it yet, but I've been dying to read it. I bought it from Amazon because it just sounded really good. And you gotta love a girl with a nice pair of shoes, right? Am I right? Just shoes. I love shoes. I cannot pull off a pair of shoes that high. For one thing, I'm tall. I'm 5'7". So I can't wear, I can wear high heels, but I tower over my husband, and that's just not polite. But for another thing, I don't know. I like my feet to be comfortable. I'm more of a sneakers girl, or like flip-flops. But yeah, I do think those shoes are some pretty cool shoes. Tower of Babel, a translated book. I know Night by Elie Wiesel has been translated into quite a few languages, so I'm going to go with Night. Plus, it's an important book about the Holocaust, and Elie Wiesel is a Holocaust survivor who struggles with his faith. So that's 2 reasons why I think it's an inspiring book. Not necessarily a happy book, but definitely a book that's important to read. And so I'm glad that it is translated in multiple languages and an important book. The Pyramids, a book featuring slavery. Now, I could go with the obvious, something like Frederick Douglass that I have taught, but I also haven't read this, but I think that this is a book. The character was a slave. It says that the character was in captivity, and this was recommended by my dear friend Stacy at Christian Reads and Classics, and it says that the main character has something on her face, like a terrible mark on her face that shows everybody she was a terrible mark on her face from when she was in captivity. So to me, captivity implies slavery. I haven't read it yet. I will. I'm interested enough that I bought it. I think that the character in here was a slave in, this is historical fiction. I believe it's biblical fiction, but not about a specific character in the Bible. I know that a lot of wonderful booktubers recommend this Connellan Cassette. I haven't read anything by Connellan Cassette yet, but I bought this because I'm interested in reading it, and Stacy just always recommends the best books. But I think that there is some captivity. It says captivity. To me, that implies slavery. So I'm going with this one. Birth of Jesus, stars on the cover. So a wonderful woman at my school, our school librarian, loaned me this graphic novel, which is in my office, so I will just put a picture of it. But it is called When Stars Are Scattered. So When Stars Are Scattered, my school librarian thought it would be a great graphic novel for some of my striving readers. And I showed it to some of my students. I keep it in my office. They can look at it when they're in there. And that is an interesting graphic novel. Jesus Resurrection, something featuring a new Christian author. Well, we all love Toni Shiloh, right? I loved In Search of a Prince by Toni Shiloh, and I know her sequel has come out recently. So I would definitely go with her because I think she's a new author. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Carrie Stewart Parks. She has a new book out called Fallout. So I'm going to mention that one as well. I didn't like it quite as much as I liked Fragments of Fear by Carrie Stewart Parks, but it is a book that is new, so I'm going to mention it. Something Has Happened in the Lion's Den, a book with danger. I'm going to go with 9. That was a book that, interestingly, it's kind of a neat story too, because Katie, and this is the Readathon, Katie's Readathon, she tagged me in that telephone tag, and she tagged me to find something to a book cover that goes with some of the themes on the book cover of 9. So all I really needed was the book cover, but I went to the library and I got the book 9, and I ended up reading it, and it was really good. But it was like an interesting science fiction about this girl on the run from the military, the FBI, I think, and they created her. She was a human, but she was created in like this lab, this government lab, to be this war machine. So she had these tremendous capabilities for battle and just all these skills, but she didn't know it because one of the scientists wiped her memory, and that scientist was killed trying to help her. And then the girl goes on the run. And so the girl's on the run, and she makes friends with this waitress, and the two of them end up on the run. And it was a good book, and there was a lot of danger. So I'm going with 9. And it's funny, you never know how you're going to encounter a good book. That was kind of a unique way, I think, to stumble across a winner. So thank you, Katie, for tagging me in that. It led to me enjoying a book, which is one of the best things I think you can do for a person, is help them enjoy a good book. All right. Thrown in Jail, a book with spiritual warfare. I've mentioned this one before. I have to mention it again because it truly is a book that changed my life. And that is Victory Over the Darkness. And it's a book all about spiritual warfare. It's not a fiction book. It's a self-help book. One reason I have kept it all these years is because I love these pages where it tells you your identity in Christ. And it tells you the verse. So according to Ephesians 1:1, I am a saint. According to 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 21 and 22, I have been established, anointed, and sealed by God. According to Hebrews 4:16, I can find grace and mercy in my times of need. And I just love this. I have it marked because there's so many verses in here that are so encouraging, and it's all about who I am in Christ. The book starts with that, and then it gets into, the different spiritual battles that you may encounter as someone in Christ. So that was a really important book for me. It was one that really changed my perspective on my purpose in life and my relationship with the Lord, and in a good way. It really helped me to deepen my faith. Thrown into a Fiery Furnace, a book that's too hot to handle. I didn't have one. Okay, be swallowed by a fish, right? Who doesn't want to be swallowed by a fish like Jonah? Me. I don't really want to be swallowed by some stinky, nasty fish. I love the ocean, but I prefer the water. I don't want to swim in the fish. I want to swim in the water. But anyway, so to be swallowed by a fish, a book that's hard to handle, a tough topic, a genre you don't usually read, or a tearjerker. So this one, I have to say, a friend of mine asked me, she's like, well, you're a booktuber, you review books. Have you read The Things You Do in the Dark by The Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hillier? And I said, no, I haven't read that. And she said, I really want to read it, but I've heard there's some content warnings. I don't know. And especially child abuse. Both of us are not real comfortable reading about child abuse. And I said, well, why don't you read it and tell me if you think I should read it? And she read it. And then she said, yeah, I think you'd like it. So The Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hillier, I'm going to review it in my October wrap up. I do recommend it, but only to somebody who's okay with, difficult content, because the book does start with content warnings. There's a lot of them. There's child abuse, there's addiction, there's violence. And I almost didn't read it because it starts off with the content warnings. But for one thing, thank you for starting with the content warnings, because to me, there's nothing worse than being well into a book and being, upset by something in the content. So this one told me up front, okay, you're going to encounter these things. And the book alludes to a lot of it, makes mention of some horrible things, but I don't think that that book really went into tremendous detail in a way that was excessive about some of the things. You needed to know some of the things that happened in order to understand the book, but it didn't get overly graphic. So that was definitely one, though, that I struggled with a decision. Do I even want to read it? And I'm glad I did. I do think it was a good book, and I definitely was not upset by the content, and I do upset easily. I'll tell you if I'm upset by something in a book. That one didn't get overly graphic, but it does tell you that there's child abuse. It tells you the main character references some abuse she experienced, but it doesn't go into detail. Okay, how do you escape? Jesus, right? That's how you escaped. He is the way, the truth, and the light, and he will take you to the room he's prepared for you up in his mansion. So yay, thank you so much for that. And thank you, Katie, for your fantastic readathon. I'm sorry that I'm late to the party, but I really wanted to support Katie's channel and her readathon. And I love Katie, and I love being a part of this community. And so those are my recommendations for the October Christian BookTube Readathon.